the craziness of saying that you want to quit something and then going back to it over and over and over again, it can be very discouraging. Alcohol is an addictive substance. If exposed to it enough times, anyone can become addicted to the reward of it.
Most of us, we torture ourselves. I say, what we trade, especially as it really stops working for us, and it only works, if at all, for 20 minutes. And then we trade misery, complete misery, the next day, and often the days after that. The trade-off is just horrible. But that's how good a negotiator the voice is.
I used to not even be able to sit with myself. Like, I could not sit and relax or watch a show or just do anything alone for more than a minute without just being like, I have to, I just can't be in my own head. I think alcohol use is influenced by your family, who you hang out with, and all those types of things. So luckily, my kids will never see me drink.
Okay, welcome into the Cappy Hour podcast with my guest today, Erica Wiechnik. Hi, Erica.
Hi, Cappy.
So I know Erica from my alcohol-free empowerment and subconscious mindset coaching certification course.
What's that? Mouthful.
I even added to that full title. I think our instructor, Carolina, of Euphoric AF is her organization. I think just calls it alcohol-free empowerment. And then it includes, or 5X certification even, which is alcohol-free mindset, success coaching, hypnosis, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. But it's all about changing these subconscious beliefs, negative beliefs in particular. Anyway, so we just got certified through there, woohoo, and we'll be launching our various coaching programs and communities. Essentially, Erica mentioned she is considers herself a high-end gray area drinker versus a alcoholic, which I define essentially an alcoholic as someone that has that voice for life, that neural pathway that we've dug so deeply that we'll always think alcohol is the answer to everything, and it will never go away, no matter how much we build on top of it. We can bury it by doing hard things sober, showing it's a new voice in town, but that voice will always stay with us for life. And to me, compel me to just start drinking heavily again if I take so much as a sip. And so what was fascinating is Erica essentially has over 3 years of sobriety, but she does have 2 data points within there where she drank a couple times. First one was on a vacation, drank like 4 glasses of wine. And another time she drank at a Nelly concert. And this was after she had 2 years and a month of sobriety. So I was kind of fascinated by that. She realized she didn't like the results and had no problem not drinking the next day, which is often the hardest day. I said, the biggest lie the voice tells us is it's just going to be for one night, just tonight, and we'll go back. Won't even tell anybody. We'll just go back to sobriety. And that rarely ever happens because we're so disappointed ourselves and so weak the next day that we immediately give in to that voice. Mm-hmm. So Erica brought up that, there's different areas of the spectrum. Every alcoholic is really different, as is, or even gray area drinkers. But end of the day, alcohol is a highly, highly addictive substance. It's really number 2, I believe, behind cocaine. They say it's basically measured by how quickly you get that dopamine hit. Anyone can get addicted to an addictive substance. I do say the addiction disorder or alcoholism is even deeper, again, because of that voice for life. So we cannot play with fire by things like taking sips, which Erica then even said she does on occasion, take a sip of her husband's drink, then reminds herself she's not interested, and then can just go back. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it back to you is I thought of the analogy of coffee. I continually try to give up coffee. I can give it up very easily. I just did it for all 3 days of our retreat. And I could sip someone else's coffee and not necessarily go back to drinking it. But I do like it, and I do use it kind of as a tool like I did alcohol. So my point is I can play with fire with that. With some others possibly couldn't. And then, if they literally cannot give it up. It's a much more ingrained within them. So yeah, Erica, how often do you take sips?
Oh gosh, it's just not even something I think about. So you guys will hear this later on in the podcast, but we wanted to preface it with like, we do not recommend people try this, but just that it is a spectrum and everyone's different. And like, I was never like, oh my gosh, I can never touch alcohol or I can never have a sip again. That's just never been the thing for me. So I don't know. Like, I probably did, like last week, I took a sip. For me, it's not something I think about. It's not something it's kind of just a reminder to, or if he gets a fancy drink, like a jalapeno margarita or something, I'll just take a sip and be like, oh, that's interesting, So it's not, for me, it's not even, it's just a drink, right? It's just a beverage. Yeah. So going back to what you said, alcohol is an addictive substance. If exposed to it enough times, anyone can become addicted to it or addicted to the reward of it. And that's definitely what happened to me. Alcohol became a huge relief in my life from my mind and it was just a way to relax, wind down at the end of the day, reward yourself at the end of the day. So for me, it was more about a very strong habit. And so now that that habit is replaced and that I've learned that it actually doesn't relieve any of the stresses or pressures or anything that I was drinking for before, it just has no pull to it anymore. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Great reminder. Use the word habit because I've been known to say, Dr. Cappy, that an addiction is just an ingrained habit and anyone can beat that. Essentially, anyone can beat that with willpower. You just reminded me with willpower, but an addiction disorder, AKA alcoholism, you cannot beat initially with willpower. You have to do the work.
Yeah, it's proven willpower for this too, though, because like alcohol is an addictive substance. It reacts in your brain like a drug. So it's more than just willpower because it's chemistry, right? So that's where a lot of shame comes in when you're trying to quit drinking and you think that all you need is more willpower or that you're just weak for not being able to quit easily. So that was definitely the case for me. Like I wanted to quit. I knew it was bad for me, but I just couldn't. Like I kept saying that I was going to, and then I would start over every Monday. Every Monday, I would swear that I would quit. So it definitely was more than willpower. Like it took completely changing my beliefs about it. And then also just enough time away from it. But the craziness of saying that you want to quit something and then going back to it over and over and over again, it can be very discouraging. Eats away at your self-confidence and that kind of just feeds into the shame. And then you drink because you're shameful and it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true, particularly with the disorder. I was so sad. A woman once came on and said, yeah, my husband told me I'm just weak, that I just lack willpower. And I guess he's right. And thank God it was a great host, Keola, who said, no, that is not the case at all. And if anything, if willpower plays a role, it's in showing up to do the work. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, in the throes of addiction, you are at the mercy of your midbrain. Your cortex, which has all your prefrontal cortex, all your rational thought, shuts down. When you get a craving, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine to get you to seek more. And your cortex essentially shuts down and you're left at the mercy of your midbrain, which is just about survival. And it places whatever your addiction is, like alcohol, number one above everything else. So it's like, I would say, being in the desert for 5 days and someone offers you a bottle of water, you haven't had any 5 days, and they say, you're going to lose everything if you take this. You're still going to take it. Anybody would.
And once you've learned hundreds, thousands of times, however many times you've drank, that alcohol gives you that reward of, whatever you're looking for, relief. You guys will hear later in the podcast about like what it did for me exactly. But when your brain has learned that alcohol is the reward, then it's just so much easier to go for. And that's why I'm always so, I don't know what the word is, envious of people who, like they're like, oh, alcohol doesn't really do anything for me. I could take it or leave it. Like that's amazing for them. And then because of that, they don't go back to it as much as somebody who liked it,
So I need to kind of continue to think through, and that's why I say Dr. Cappy jokingly, because I'm certainly not. This is my theory on the fly that I'm always trying to improve on, because you're not really going to be able to Google this exactly. And certainly AI, this is an example of where they can't tell you without having the human experience. But yeah, there are various levels of gray area drinkers, and some, yeah, can easily beat this with willpower, can just stop drinking it. Even if they've come to rely on drinking it at the end of the week for stress or what have you, they can just quit it. And then some on the higher end of even the gray area, like you said, it's not just willpower and you have to put in some of the work, but maybe not as much of the work as those that have the full disorder, because we typically say that, AA certainly says, you can't do it alone, which for most with the disorder truly can't. You have to be in community. You need to do the work, includes therapy, coaching, sharing within calls, and a ton of other stuff,
Yeah. And to touch on that, it can be kind of difficult. Like for me anyway, I felt like I didn't really belong anywhere in the sober community. I went to AA a couple times and I just felt like that was just not for me. And I didn't really know of more community. I know of more now because, I'm in that world on Instagram now and that's all I see. But at the time, it didn't seem like there were really many options for me. So I did end up ultimately doing it alone. I actually hired a coach and that helped me a lot. And I did some other things, like a lot of other things, a lot of work, but on my own.
Well, just over 3 years ago that you really quit, right? How often were you drinking leading up till then? Like per week?
Well, before that, I had just had my baby. So I didn't really, there was only 3 months after having my baby where I was drinking, and it wasn't very much, like at most 2 drinks a day, but not every day. I was nursing, so I wasn't drinking much at that time. And then I was obviously pregnant for 9 months, so not drinking at all then. So really, it was even before that I was drinking more than I was happy with. But I always say for me, it wasn't necessarily the quantity. I mean, I did drink. I could drink a lot. I had a pretty high tolerance, but it didn't look like a problem to other people. If I could go out and drink the same amount as other people and they seemed to be fine the next day. And I would just be depressed and anxious and just hating myself. And I couldn't sit still. I couldn't rest. I could never sleep when I drank. I always had to overcompensate the next day because I just felt so horrible. And I was so mad at myself that I would work extra hard to compensate for feeling bad. So it didn't look like a problem to other people. That was kind of the hardest part, is I felt very alone. Even when I expressed to people how much I wanted to quit, they were kind of like, oh, you're just kind of hungover today. Or yeah, nobody knew how much I was suffering on the inside.
Yeah. You brought up your drinking was never normal, was not normal from the start, which would sound like what an alcoholic would essentially say. So it is interesting, this, but again, just being high on the high end of the gray area, it just hit you harder.
And you know what? Maybe identifying as an alcoholic is helpful for some people. So maybe that's, there's that too. For me, that doesn't feel good. It's not how I want to define myself for the rest of my life, especially when I'm not currently drinking and I don't ever plan to drink again. So it doesn't help, it doesn't feel good for me to call myself an alcoholic. And I know that it doesn't have the power over me. I guess that's what they say in AA, is that you're powerless over it. And I don't feel powerless over it anymore. But as far as it never being normal for me, I can see that now in retrospect, just how I reacted to it in my body and in my mind wasn't normal. I always tracked how much I drank. I always had the goal to drink less often or only on special occasions. I always thought about it. Yeah, it was just took up so much mental space for me.
Yeah, because that's even another thing, how tempted we still get. Oh, I was grinning while you were talking because wondering if you're thinking I'm trying to talk you into that you are an alcoholic, or to use that word. And I'm not certainly in all, because an alcoholic, most I think would agree or think, couldn't take sips. I mean, this is a fascinating thing of discussion. And
I'm glad you're so fascinated by it. I really didn't think anything of it, but
I really am. And, while we are absolutely not encouraging it at home,
yes, don't do that.
Maybe this will bring out others to talk about it as well. I'd be very curious to know, because especially within sobriety circles, people might be afraid to admit it. You said this was the first time you had really talked about it. And then it's also struggle with the day count. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just choose to not talk about it because people are very uptight about their number and their sobriety date. And like, I have one. I could come up with the last day that I drank and just call that my sobriety date. But I just think that kind of takes away from all the work that I did before that. So it's whatever people want. So I just don't bring it up because I don't think it's really necessary either. But if people wanted to know, it was either March or April of last year. I would have to find the exact date of the last date that I drank. But then, like, would people consider a sip? Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't know.
I was just going to say, if it was a purposeful sip, I mentioned I had an accidental one just over the weekend, first time ever. They probably would say that, that's debatable. Because as you said, you almost physically, you can't even physically get a buzz from that. So it's really almost one sip of an alcohol drink shouldn't be any more than, not sure of this, but like than drinking an NA drink. So no, that really shouldn't count. And I think it's fascinating, the debate of, which I had with my friend Matt, who likes to debate everything, about streak versus a percentage. He said, so you're telling me that somebody that hasn't gone a whole year and hasn't drank for 99% of the time, but if they drank a week ago, they're looked upon as lesser basically than someone that just has, say, a month of sobriety. Yeah, a person with a month is ahead of them.
So that's what I don't love is, like, if you're doing something 99.8%, I worked it out, that's the percentage, 1,183 days out of the last 1,185 days, I have not drank. So that's 99.8%. So if that bothers people, and then that's fine, that they don't need to do it that way. But I don't think we need to tell people how they need to count their progress or what counts, because all that matters is that it counts to them and that they're just doing better than they were before.
Yeah. I still don't know what I'd say if I was you. Because we talked about, you don't want to feel like you're lying about it, but basically, yeah, you've gone three plus years. I'd say 3 years and a month, and possibly just leave it at that. They were 1 day planned slips in your case. Yeah, it's fascinating. My typical concern, back to Matt's question, is that in the case of someone with that true alcoholic disorder, that even a sip reinvigorates that voice. And I do think, depending where you are in that spectrum, from a gray area up to a true alcoholic, as I mentioned, that voice with the true alcoholic sticks with you for life. But every day, yeah, you do hard things sober, which initially is just getting through the day sober. That is a hard thing. You start to bury that neural pathway. First you have kick some dirt on it, and then the weeds start to grow over it. And then eventually you completely pave over that thing. It's still underneath, but then you pave, and then maybe you could say it's another layer of pavement every year. And that's where you get stronger every single year, but it's always there, and it always senses weakness, and it's always still trying to talk you into it. I mentioned a buddy 4 years in, and he just said to me on Sunday, I think I could go back and drink responsibly. And I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. So with you, that voice, you might be able to, you had it, but you were able to just bury it and possibly even go away. Most neural pathways atrophy and die off. Oh, that's the key. That's the norm. In the case of alcoholism, it never dies. It weakens, it atrophies. I love that word, but it never dies off. And in your case, it likely did die off. All the things you used it for, which you said were mainly psychological, you've eliminated and you've worked on your beliefs, and it's never going to come back. So you can take sips and you're going to be fine with it.
Yep. I always say now, like, I could maybe drink if I wanted to, but I just don't want to. I don't want to. I don't ever want to go back to feeling the way that it felt. And life is just so much better without it. Like, you can pay me $1 million to go back.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And a key point I've wanted to make, and you've touched on, is yes, you never lose those sober days. Every day sober, you've built up resilience. I consider it a resilience bank, and you never lose that resilience bank. Might take a hit when you slip, but you still have those resilient days. So again, back to Matt's question, for me in the case of a true alcoholic, frankly, yeah, that guy, the person with a month, is kind of ahead. And this isn't judging, but I mean in terms of risk of relapsing, like severely relapsing, a guy that has a month is at less risk than the person that may have gone 99% of the year, but just drank a week ago, because that voice does get reawakened. I say it's a parasite. It needs alcohol to survive and to thrive, but then it'll shrivel up. But once you even take a sip, it reawakens it. And then as you drink more, it really comes back to life. And that's why we can sometimes drink normally for a week or so. I mentioned yesterday, but our brains catch up to it, and that voice gets louder and louder. And I do believe that's how a lot of people die of alcohol poisoning. They're ones that have gone quite a while without drinking, and then they do pick up again, and that thing comes back with a vengeance. Because when we do relapse, it's typically worse every time. In fact, I once quit for 3.5 years, and it took me 6 years to get back to a year. And I knew within a week that my life was so much better without it, and then I had to quit again. But that's how long it took me. And that's a fun fact I learned. It's actually harder when you relapse after a long period of abstinence than if you did after a shorter period. So
that's crazy. And I guess people just need to know themselves and know before a relapse happens that it's going to happen. So I guess people just need to know themselves and know if that path is gone or if it's just there laying dormant, just waiting for you to reawaken it. So I'm not sure. I can't really speak to that. I can only speak to my experience. And those are the type of people that I hope to work with in the future, are people similar to me who, yeah, like their drinking is a huge problem for them and their life and for reaching their full potential, but it doesn't necessarily look like a huge problem to the rest of the world. They don't call themselves an alcoholic. It's for, gray area drinkers who are just wanting to level up their life and get their confidence back and their identity back. For me, a lot of my drinking was to deal with like identity crises. So if you define yourself as what you're doing at the time instead of who you are as a person, and you lose that, it can be extremely hard. And so that's what I want to teach women to do too, is to just, their identity is them, not what they're doing. So then you'll never need to go back to alcohol, because no matter what phases of your life you're going through, because especially my audience, it's mostly millennial moms. We're going to go through a lot of phases of our life. We became moms. Our children are going to get older. Things are going to change. They're eventually going to leave the house, which I can't even think about that right now. That makes me so sad to think about. But that is a time of my life that I am planning to be extremely difficult. And I need to build a foundation before I get there so that I'm okay, And that's what I want to help other people do too.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And that's what we learned in our certification. Again, as I touch on, it's all about, the subconscious, changing an identity mind shift. And, the argumentative friend, Matt, I did a video about shifting your identity to just that of a non-drinker. I think that's very important in early sobriety. He said, what? That's your whole identity? That you're a non-drinker? That's not good. Then you're never going to go on to other things. I said, no, just especially just early on.
So yeah, at the beginning, and it doesn't have to be your only identity, but it's just instead of saying, oh, I can't drink or I'm trying not to drink, that's too wishy-washy. You have to just say, I don't drink.
Right. And say it with pride, just as if you said, I'm a non-smoker. I mean, we touched on it yesterday. It's so crazy how people would celebrate if you said, I quit smoking, and would never encourage you to go back, and would never hand you a carton of cigarettes in the delivery room, maternity ward, where they might bring you a bottle of wine. Yeah, it's crazy. Matt's point was we get, those of us in the sobriety communities get so caught up, wrapped up in it. Like one I was in, it was almost like a cult. In AA, some might even say that. But it's very important in the first year. Yeah. I was like, because his wife is an alcoholic who basically did it on her own. She went out and started up a yoga studio with friends and just did hard things on her own. So he thinks everyone can just do that. And I said, dude, you got to be very careful. Yeah, you want to go outside your comfort zone in early sobriety, but you got to stay inside your strength zone. For many of us, that just means literally staying inside the house, identify as a non-drinker, and just attend meetings. It is fascinating. I do want this podcast even to appeal to even gray area drinkers as well, which is almost everybody, particularly in the US and maybe Canada, where you're at. She's in Calgary. That's just what you do. You started drinking in your teens, and it was just a thing. And it's very hard. It's just like coffee. When I try to give up coffee, it's just as pervasive as alcohol is. Once I had given up for a week, then I went to meet my mother for breakfast. It's like, what am I going to drink? I love getting coming around with the refills of coffee when I go out for breakfast. So
Nonstop coffee.
I love the free refills. Except when they do it too soon. When I have the cream and sugar mix.
You're like, I have the perfect mix. You messed it up.
I hate that. I'm like, no, it's too late. They've already filled me up. But really, I'm trying to think more about gray area drinkers. I want to appeal to them. Even I plan to open my own sobriety community, hopefully very soon. I think people think they need to be alcoholics to be within those. But I know there are several, particularly women communities, female communities that are appeal to gray area drinkers. And that should be the same. One community I was initially in had a cutback track, which is very difficult for a true alcoholic. But for gray area drinkers, that's something that is maybe within
a cutback track, just like a plan to progressively cut down, or
yep. Okay. And possibly to cut down to zero. Some people switched tracks to the full sobriety track, but others were just trying to cut down.
Okay.
We kind of called it the torture track behind the scenes.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like I think most people who, get into that territory where their drinking is a problem for them and it's consuming their mind, it's very hard. Like moderation just takes up so much mental space. Like I could moderate, I just didn't like it. I would be there thinking about my next drink or wanting to have another drink, and just knowing that I shouldn't, it's just not fun. Like not abstaining for me is way, way, way easier than moderation.
Right.
Ever was. That was just, torture.
Yeah, I love to say the only people that can moderate are those that don't need to try to moderate.
Yeah. Moderation is, I think, only a word for people who have a bit of a problem, Other people who can just really, truly take it or leave it don't talk about moderation.
Just on a call yesterday, the day before, I said, I can't even moderate coffee. I still overconsume it when I have to do hard things. But then when I eliminate it, I do hard things, no problem on my own. So it's frustrating. You know what I can moderate? Ready for this? NA beers. I think I mentioned yesterday, I'm lucky if I can drink 2. I typically can't. I actually leave usually about a third of it still in the glass if I even have 2. So that's how normal drinkers are with regular drinks, particularly those lower on that spectrum. There's a neuroscience woman that said basically if we could give everyone brain exams, we could see the level, we'd know who the alcoholics are, and by just how much their brain would light up when they see the alcohol in this case, or any addict, whatever their addictive substance is, how much their brain lights up. So in your case, your brain maybe lights up a little bit less, and particularly now as you've gotten away from it. And also the negatives may be more consequential or severe for you. You know, most of us, we torture ourselves. You know, I say what we trade, especially as it really stops working for us, and it only works, if at all, for 20 minutes. And then we trade misery, complete misery the next day, and often the days after that. You know, the trade-off is just horrible. But that's how good a negotiator the voice is. But we still do it. We don't care. The consequences aren't negative enough that we can, you know, give it up. But it sounds like that really drove you largely. And one more analogy I have is with gambling. So I gambled once I got my student loans paid off long ago. I got into gambling thanks to my brother's friends who got me set up with their bookie. They should have told me no. I'm proud to this day. I had a guy I work with who asked me to set him up with my bookie after I got it, and I refused, flat out refused. And his friend should have, because you cannot win. You cannot win gambling. So anyway, I lost about 10 grand over a year or two. I'm not sure how long. For me, I never got that much of a high from winning because I always knew it was going to come with losing. And I got such a low from losing. I was only addicted to try and win my money back. And when I realized that was never going to happen, I gave it up cold turkey. And I've never gone back since, other than, I'll bet occasionally on the golf course, buy a lottery ticket, things like that, which I almost think is like you taking a sip. Like I can do that and it's never going to bring me back into a full-blown gambling addiction. Even if I went to a casino and started betting at the sports books, and even if I start winning or losing, the fear of I hate losing a dime. So I just would never go back. So true gambling addicts, though, totally different. They have that neural pathway, it doesn't go away, and their brain lights up way more than mine does when they win. Their dopamine hits are way, way more. So one more thing to bring up, which you touched on, is, well, again, because I think you don't have the voice compelling you to go back. And I asked one of our colleagues about it, who's had a long period of sobriety, like 10 years, and she said, I never think about it at all. Whereas I was just out with my buddy's girlfriend. She has 5 years. She's like, I think about it all the time. I wish I could be a social drinker. You know, so she still has that voice that pipes up in her head.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when I'm out and that first 20 minutes where people are, because that's all alcohol does, is kind of loosens you up sooner than it would if you just weren't drinking, right? So when you're with a group and everyone else is drinking and everyone's getting kind of starting to talk a little bit, that first 20 minutes, sometimes I'm like, it would be nice if I could have drinks, but then that's all it is, 20 minutes. After that, I'm like, sure glad I didn't. And for me, like, I just remember crawling into bed at night and feeling so proud of myself and just knowing that I was actually going to get rest instead of an anxious sleep where I wake up with my heart racing, sweating, mad at myself. So I would just envision myself crawling into bed at the end of a night and just feeling that sense of pride, and nothing beats that. So I guess I can't say I never think about it, but it's not, I don't ever worry that I'm going to drink or anything like that.
All right. And it is such a good reminder. It's true. You know, it is just that 20 minutes, maybe even up to an hour of uncomfortability. But as I heard a sobriety podcaster say, she said, but after an hour, typically at the most, you adjust and you do feel more comfortable. And then basically you just making me think of this theory on the fly. You catch up to those people that drank. So you sucked it up for the first 20 to 60 minutes, but then you caught up to them. And a lot of them, like alcoholics, when it stops working, and we talked about this yesterday, your anxiety gets worse. It's like an anxiety pill works for 20 minutes, then it just gets worse. So you not only caught up to their comfort level, you may have even surpassed their comfort level as they continue.
And then you get to go home and actually feel good about your conversations instead of thinking you might have said something you shouldn't have said, or I don't know. It's just so much better. You know, the rewards of not drinking are just honestly endless for me. So
Oh, it's crazy. For me to be able to go to a social event and then go an early one and go to the gym after, or just come home and actually watch TV, not just pass out or read a book or whatever.
yeah, and like going out used to be such an ordeal. I had to plan how to get there, plan how to get home. You waste half the event either in line to get a drink or in line to go to the bathroom. Like, how many concerts have I been to where I missed my favorite song because I was getting a drink or going pee?
Or don't remember your favorite song. Oh my,
Yeah.
almost every concert. And I've since been to several sober concerts, including being on the floor for U2, and it was awesome. And I remembered everything, but there's so many concerts and that's another question. Is it worth the drinking if you're not going to remember? You're going to go out and have fun, but if you're not going to remember it, what's the point? And yeah.
No, it's not worth it. And even people who maybe don't necessarily have a problem with drinking, I think could benefit from not drinking. But you have to do it, right? You have to experience it for yourself. Nobody's going to believe what someone else has to say, especially if they don't consider themselves to have a problem. But like you mentioned, most people do drink too much. Most drinkers drink too much. And like, people don't stay sober because it's boring and it sucks. I don't know really anyone that I've talked to that's like, oh, I hate life sober. So
yeah, no, it's so true.
because everyone thinks that life without drinking is going to be so boring. I used to think that. Like, I used to say things like, oh, I don't trust people who don't drink, or drinking or life without drinking would be so boring. What do you do for fun? I used to say things like that.
I will say, when I quit for 3.5 years, 11 years ago, I did it, as I said, basically alone. I didn't realize it, but the way I was able to do it was by, well, first I got very sick, unrelated to drinking. So that got me the 2-week break I needed when I was on antibiotics and all that. And then from there, I just did hard things sober every day, and without even realizing that is the key to maintaining sobriety. But I trained for a new career. I got a new job. It was over my head. I worked for a very control freak boss. And if I was in the throes of drinking, I would have been drinking at 7 a.m. every day. And instead, I showed up every day and I did a great job, and I did. And I had a girlfriend. I went to hot yoga all the time. But then we broke up. I started dating, and life did get boring for me. It's because I was single. I wasn't in community. I never gained emotional sobriety during that period because I wasn't doing enough spiritual growth and personal development, even though I was doing hard things. So you, with the family, you've got community, connection, all that stuff. It is important, because that to me is the only risk. That sobriety did get boring for me in that case because I was not in community and I wasn't doing the work to really get replace all those negative thoughts I used to have with now that I'm done it this time around in community, and I've got all these wonderful thoughts filling my head. I always think of that Pink song, A Million Dreams, when I think about that. So yeah.
But you brought up that term emotional sobriety. And to be honest, that wasn't even a term that I thought I qualified for. But it really just means like your ability to handle life without alcohol, right? And if you've used alcohol in the past for the solution to anything, if it was for stress or for connection or for just relief, if you've had a hard day, anything like that, if you don't learn actual tools, that is emotional sobriety, being able to handle life without alcohol. So that is just doing it over and over again and not avoiding it, because that's easy to do too. Even if you're not drinking, you still can be not becoming emotionally sober. People talk about that all the time. If you're not actually handling your problems in a healthy way, if you move your addiction from one thing to another thing, it's still not working on your emotional sobriety.
Right. Which is why, especially for those severely in the throes of alcoholism, the work is so important, and not just going to meetings. There's a term, dry drunk. I hate it because I hate the word drunk, but it's people that basically still want to drink and they're still envious of drinkers. And those are those that really aren't doing the work, which again is really spiritual growth and personal development. I know a couple of them through sobriety communities where all the work they're doing is showing up to meetings, which is great, and even sharing on meetings. But for those, if you're severe on the spectrum, it's not enough. And you've got to do more, like therapy, coaching. Therapy's for the past, coaching for the future. And then a bunch of other stuff, mindfulness, gratitude practice, meditation. I've got a list literally of 100 things that constitute the work, but I've got my top 20. And strengthening your mind, which is why number one I've mentioned is my cold shower finishes. But my point is, yeah, emotional sobriety, they say, is living life on life's terms. And you can get there. You find, that's why even gray area drinkers, everyone over 30, let's face it, would like to drink either less or, aside from the conglomeration that can take it or leave it, but would like to drink less or give it up entirely. I mean, how many people, everybody has woken up with a horrible hangover and vowed to never drink again. But how many actually do it? I mean, we are the luckiest, as the book is titled, because we've actually pulled it off and learned to not only live life sober, but to enjoy it, as you just said. And that's why I'm the only one I heard, I'm probably elsewhere out there, but not only do I say emotional sobriety, but again, I gained permission to enjoy life sober because I really didn't feel that the first time around, but I do this time around.
I'm happy for you.
It's a wonderful life. And, I will add, I thought of this earlier when you talked about, if people didn't enjoy it, they would go back. And it's true. Nobody regrets it. Nobody regrets getting sober. But a story I tell often is a woman that was at the Masters golf tournament, which is coming up soon. And a nearby guy she didn't know, but he overheard a conversation and knew that she was sober. And he turned to her with a drink in hand and said, I was once sober for 8 years, the best 8 years of my life. And then took a sip, because he was back in the throes of it. And that's how powerful this is. And that's why, come full circle, that I think those on the severe end, those with, the alcoholism, where that pathway just stays with us for life, that's our only life sentence, we can be in permanent remission. Every day we don't drink, it gets weaker, we get stronger. But that's where even a sip can really reinvigorate it and come back with a vengeance. And then as much as we know our life was better without it, it's so difficult to quit again. So yeah, the struggle is real.
A lot of drinking and me has to do with identity crises. So the one when I was younger was trying to escape this identity that I had established. And then when I quit doing gymnastics, I was about 20, and I also was graduating from my college diploma around the same time. So that was another huge identity crisis. I was Erica, the gymnast, my entire life. And so when I stopped doing gymnastics and graduated, I had no idea who I was anymore. It really was a huge, huge dark time in my life. And I kind of replaced that with partying and socializing and hanging out with friends, because I didn't do that so much in high school. I trained 6 days a week. I trained on Sundays. Like, I did go to parties in high school, but I couldn't all the time. And I eventually decided that it probably wasn't good for my gymnastics career. So I made up for lost times after that. And so that was kind of my party phase. And then I started working that job, or those jobs downtown Calgary, that I really, really was not fulfilled in. They were not rewarding, just soul crushing, working a job like that you really are not passionate about. And I guess drinking on the weekends and the evenings, it was kind of an excuse to not have to address how much I didn't like what I was doing, just kind of put it away until tomorrow. But those days I had met my husband now, boyfriend at the time. And I used to wake up crying in the morning, just dreading going to work and being mad at myself for having wine the night before, saying I wouldn't do it ever again. And I would walk home from work, listen to wellness podcasts on my way to work, pack with my healthy packed lunch that I cooked, and I would work out at lunch. And then all while, still drinking.
Yeah, I'd love to say I was the world's healthiest alcoholic, but I think there was a lot of us with drinking problems, but then compensated everywhere else in our lives. And I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but then you mentioned becoming a mother and really buying into the mommy wine culture. So
yeah, so that's kind of the next phase of drinking. I became a mom in 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. So COVID, everything shut down, isolated, and I was also a mom. I also got laid off from my job that I hated at that time, 2 months before I got pregnant. So another identity shift, identity crisis, went from downtown corporate woman to mom at home with no job, and just a huge difference. And I think that's when it kind of became normal to drink during the day. You know, other moms would come over and we'd have wine during the play dates, or wine after the kid went down for a nap, like that type of thing. And it was so normal. Like, it didn't seem weird, and I was definitely not the only one doing it.
I've actually never asked anyone this. What's approximately the earliest you ever drank?
Oh, like noon, probably. Noon, 11:30.
Amateur.
Yeah,
Amateur.
yeah. No,
No.
It wasn't like drinking in the morning type thing. It was just time kind of wasn't really a thing when you became a mom. It was, you know, by noon you had already lived 10 lives, so it didn't feel odd.
And I'm kidding saying amateur, because I don't think I did it many times, but I do remember once I had this job I hated, particularly a boss I hated, and I had stayed over at my girlfriend's house, and I think it was around 7 a.m. I think I had vodka in her freezer and drank before just heading into work. I got to that point where I couldn't even handle going in and then drank throughout the whole day. But yeah, that's crazy. So when did you know you wanted or had an issue, or yeah?
I mean, the whole time.
Right.
From the time I started drinking till the time I quit, I always had it as a goal to cut down on drinking. It just really affected me. It made me super depressed. It made me super anxious. I also noticed that I felt like most people that I was with could just have a drink or two and then go on with their day. But I would feel awful after a drink. Like, it would make me, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. Well, it's the dopamine, right? Like, it would make me feel super happy and relieved and motivated for about 20 minutes, but then the crash was super intense. So having a drink or two was not really an option for me unless I was going to go to bed or something, because it just made me feel so awful. So if I could go home and lay down, then that would be fine. But if I had to continue on with my day, I usually was like, hey, well, I need to have another drink to not feel horrible. And I'm learning so much now about alcohol, as you are. But I've learned that the dopamine spike is way different from person to person. And I've decided that for me, it must have been extremely high because, like I said, the high was high and the low was low.
Yeah, I love to say it's like a doctor telling you, oh, I've got this anxiety pill you could take, but it only works for 20 minutes and then it's going to make it worse. And then imagine you saying, yeah, I'll take a case of it. Yeah, load me up. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, speaking of anxiety, like, that's what the doctor said about me. You're anxious, you're depressed. And I was medicated for that stuff too. And I knew alcohol wasn't healthy. I think we all knew that. But I had no idea how much it was affecting my mental health. And ultimately, that is why I decided to quit drinking. There were nothing physical. I mean, I would not feel 100%, but I was still showing up for my life and my days, and I was still being productive. And like I said, it looked like I had everything handled, but on the inside, I was dying.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
And I would go months or weeks, or, you know, I would start over every Monday or every month, and I could easily do weeks or months off. But for the longest time, the goal was never to quit drinking completely. It was to moderate the same as everyone else. It was to be able to drink like a normal person, or to have one or two, and I'd just be able to feel like what I thought everyone else felt. So I think that's why I kept going back to it, was because I didn't want to ditch it forever. You know, that seemed like impossible.
Yeah. And how many kids do you have? And I'm always intrigued by that women basically have to give it up for the most part during their pregnancy, but most seem to go right back to it, even though we know how great it is, how great sobriety is for everybody, really. But it seems like you just never forget that feeling, whether you have a drinking problem or not, and you just want it back, right? Particularly after you go through all childbirth, right?
Yeah. So I have 2 kids, and giving it up for pregnancy was not hard at all for either. Didn't even think twice about it. But yeah, it's very normal. People even bring you wine after you give birth. Like, here, you haven't drank and you haven't been able to have a drink in 9 months. So here's a gift to you. It's really normal. Yeah, it's marketed as, mommy deserves to relax. Mommy needs her time. Mommy needs connection with other moms. So have some drinks. And it's just literally the last thing moms need. And looking back at how tired and depleted and anxious I was, it would just put fuel on the fire.
Yeah, it's crazy. I never thought of it till you just said it, but imagine if a smoker, well, this must happen actually, right? You're not supposed to smoke when you're pregnant either. So if a smoker had that incentive and almost was forced to give up smoking for 9 months, and then imagine if the friends all gave them cartons of cigarettes. I can't help but laugh at that. I mean, it is laughable. And there needs more of it. We need to get a campaign going. And for regular drinkers, who I hope can also listen to this, because this is as much about just leveling up your life, whether you're a regular drinker or have a problem. But drinking is the new smoking. I mean, sorry, but it is poison, low-level poison. But so imagine a smoker breaking the cycle for 9 months and then can't wait to go right back, or being encouraged to go right back. But until we actually do have campaigns where people think of it that way, then people are going to always encourage people to go right back. But because I'm lucky I was never addicted to smoking. I used to smoke when I drank, only bumming cigarettes. I've never bought a pack in my life, but I loved to smoke when I drank. Hi, Mom. Just in bars. But anyway, but if I was ever addicted to smoking, I can't imagine being able to give that up. But pregnancy would force you to. So.
Yeah, or you gave it up for 9 months and then somebody brought you a case as a pack as a gift and said, "Here you go."
Yeah, it's crazy. It's reminded me. I had 2 friends just on 2 days ago say how one has 4 years, one has 5 years, and the 4-year one said, "I think I could drink responsibly now, but I don't want to give up my 4 years." And the other one, 5 years, said, "My dream is to be a social drinker." And to both of them, I said, first of all, don't even think about it. We cannot drink normally, no matter how much you think you've learned every lesson. But also, why would you want to go back? You've beat it. You've learned to live life without drinking low-level poison and learn to navigate life without. Why would you want to go back, even as a social drinker? So,
God, you cannot pay me to go back to that life.
Yeah, it is crazy. Fun fact, I haven't really talked about publicly, except I shared it on a recovery meeting yesterday. On Sunday, I went to a bar, which I have no issue doing. I'm at 2+ years sobriety, and I'm massive ADD, which we'll talk about if we have time. I know you do. I don't know about massive, but you have it as well. So I got a Guinness Zero draft. My buddy comes back from the bathroom and he goes, "Dude, you're holding my beer." And he had a Bud Light, which looks nothing like Guinness. But besides the ADD, I was talking and watching a basketball game. Well, that all contributes. But mine's actually gotten worse. Well, I discovered it in sobriety, but it's actually worse because I'm always multi-thinking so heavily that I'm never thinking about what's literally right in front of me. Anyway, I took at least 1 sip, if not 2. And I truly felt a little bit of a buzz. They were making fun of me. They're like, "Dude, that's such a small amount." I swear, I even felt a little dizzy talking to my friend. But I didn't freak out because I've heard enough people sharing sobriety calls that they've gotten served by mistake, and they even feel a little shame. They wonder if they should reset their count. Thank God I've told enough people, like, what are you talking about? It's not your fault, and don't even think about it.
There's absolutely no shame in that. Like, that would be crazy if you were to A, feel bad, or B, start counting over again. I'm not a huge fan of counting. Like, if that helps you and you like it, but I don't think it needs to be this obsessive thing that you do.
Yeah, I do want to talk about it. Just to finish that story, it was weird. It did make me feel a teeny bit more like drinking. Like I finished my NA beer, and then there was the tiniest sip left in it, which I usually would never care about. And my buddy went to take the drink away, and I almost was like, "Dude, hold on. Let me drink that tiny little thing." But I settled down after that. I didn't even have a second one. I can never drink more than 2 NA beers. But even driving home, I didn't drive home for another hour and a half. I swear, getting out of Boston, just at the beginning, I had like 10 and 2 on the wheel as if I had been drinking.
I wonder if it was a bit of a placebo thing for you too.
That's what they all thought. I mean, they really were making fun of me. My buddy even goes, dude, you better have some nachos to absorb all the alcohol you drank. But
the 2 sips of light beer, alcohol. Yeah,
exactly. And that's true. Thank God it was Bud Light. But it really was a very serious thing, even though I laugh about it. That easily could have triggered people, including me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's some people that I think that could be super dangerous, right? Well,
yeah. Most people, it's already in their back of their minds, especially when they have, well, almost no matter how much time they have, but long termers. I quit for 3.5 years and then decided I could drink normally and found out very quickly within a week. I always say the good news, I could drink normally. Bad news, not for long. That's a story for another day. But I do think day count can be important because of what my buddy just said. He goes, I think I could drink responsibly, but I don't want to give up my 4 years.
Yeah.
And so I do think for that reason, and that was the thing. I did it alone for that 3.5 years, and I wasn't declaring to anybody. Wow. The only one I was really celebrating with was a girlfriend I had for the first couple years, but I was single at the time. There was nobody. I wasn't going to have to show up to a meeting the next day and say I'm back to day one. So I think that's one reason it could help. So have you found your anxiety has lessened?
Oh, gosh. Yes. Yeah. So again, my symptoms and the reason I quit drinking, it was mostly, if not all, mental, right? So I used to not even be able to sit with myself. I could not sit and relax or watch a show or just do anything alone for more than a minute without just being like, I have to, I just can't be in my own head. The guilt, the shame, the anxiety, just everything. And now I just, my life feels so peaceful. I can't even, there's no other word besides that. And I honestly didn't think that I could be like this. I thought anxiety was a part of my personality. And don't get me wrong, I still get anxious, but it's usually for a reason, anxiety isn't bad. It's just trying to help us, show us something. It's our body trying to speak to us. And when you're drinking and you have that high level anxiety that's just under your skin all the time, it really is hard to differentiate what you should actually be anxious about and what's just in your mind, right? So now I use anxiety as a tool. I know something needs to change or something's wrong. If I'm feeling anxious about something, it's it's your intuition, right? So yes, my anxiety is so much better. My intuition, I can actually hear it. I sleep. That's also something I just thought I couldn't sleep. I thought I was a bad sleeper. I said I had insomnia. Yeah, it just is all gone now.
Absolutely. Fun fact, as I learned in this great book, Level Up by Rob Dial, when we get anxious, our brains mark the chemicals acetylcholine and I think it's epinephrine come out in our brains, and they mark the neurons in our brains to be changed overnight when we do hard things. So I try to embrace it. I always say in sobriety, you need to embrace the tension, embrace the fear. It creates resilience, which creates greatness and will make you stronger. So instead of hitting that easy button, embrace the hard button. And yeah, isn't that fascinating? That it's not until, and that's why we need good sleep and we need to hit the REM cycle. That's when our brains get rewired overnight. And that's why our brains don't give us credit. If we do hard things drinking, we don't get any credit for it, basically, because we don't dream when you sleep for almost exclusively. Fun fact. So you don't hit the REM stage. So even if you did a hard thing, your brain's not going to rewire in that process. Our brains replay our memories from the day during that stage. It's so fascinating. So the point is, to embrace anxiety. My favorite meme says the true measure of success is a calm nervous system. And I'm getting closer and closer to that in sobriety. I get anxious now. I almost call it pre-anxiety, which is or anticipatory anxiety, but it never really hits. I told you I did a live with our coach, Carolina, last week, and I kept thinking I was going to get anxious for it. It helped that I did a cold shower finish right before it, confident shower. Even though it was at 5:30 at night, I saved my cold shower. Anytime I have to do a really hard thing, I will do the cold shower finish. But anyway, so today you mentioned you were anxious. This was your first podcast. So in the past, we would cheat the system with alcohol.
Yeah, I probably would have had a little couple sips before or a drink. Yeah, totally.
She was just learning, training, so she offered to do me for free. I now have another friend, an ADD friend, that's doing the same, and she's been invaluable as a coach for me. So it's so critical. If you don't have to pay, I'm sorry, but you should. It's both therapies for the past, coachings for the future. It's so important. But what I want to ask you about quickly is that post where you talked about drinking at 15 and wish you realized sooner was only a temporary Band-Aid. You said, let's normalize learning life skills to deal with problems and teach our children. And I had another friend just say, I'm never, I don't know if his wording was allow my children to drink, but it's true. My nephew just started college and I want to be like, dude, don't do it. Thank God he didn't join a frat. I was so happy he didn't join a frat. And there are way less, whatever, zillennials or whatever they're called, drinking now. But so finish in 1 minute, like, how old are your kids? And yeah, will you almost strongly encourage them to never even try it?
Yeah, well, they're only 3 and 5, so thankfully I have a lot of time to think about
I
that.
thought they were young, but
Yeah, but I do think
the
about it.
3-year-old for sure shouldn't even think about it.
I do think about it all the time but I think alcohol use is influenced by your family, who you hang out with, and all those types of things. So luckily, my kids will never see me drink. I mean, my youngest saw me drink for the first couple years of her life, but she won't remember. And my husband drinks, but not that much. And the kids these days aren't really drinking. So I'm hoping by the time they get there, it just won't be as much of an influence. And I'm obviously going to encourage them not to. I honestly think if I knew more about alcohol when I was younger, I wouldn't have gone for it. I thought it was the solution to my problem of being stuck inside this identity that I so badly wanted out of. And I had no idea what it could lead to. And I think if I knew, I would have thought twice about it, you know? So I think just educating them, they're always going to need to make their own decisions and you can't control that. But I think just being a good influence, leading by example, and giving them as much information as I can is my plan.
Yeah. And hopefully by then, I mean, it will become, we're thinking, some of us hoping it will become looked at truly like smoking and not just by those of us that are overly well informed. So hopefully by then that will be how it looked, because I do wonder, where would my life be today if I had not started doing, I made it 3 months into college. I still don't know how I did it, but I was living life, doing hard things sober every day, including walking in to my dorm room for the first time where guys were swilling beers in my dorm room, and I still made it through. So yeah, it's who knows. All right, great stuff. The.Erica. And I do have to ask, I want to ask you, your Erica W is your last name, but I always just read it as Erica, like you did that on purpose. Was that on purpose, or did you just do it to be like Erica W, or did you consider it kind of being funny that it is like Erica?
No, I never thought of Erica.
No.
I probably the Erica was gone as a name. I don't know. I came up.
You're Erica in my head. So,
That's
all
funny.
right. Well, thank you. Enjoy the winter, spring in Calgary.
Yes.
And
Thanks so much.
we'll talk soon. All right. Thanks all for joining. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.